is a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
He's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast, where we sit at 100. And I don't know if you've heard of this player before. Sidney Crosby of subscribers. Have you heard of this player? He's played 1,048 games, 488 goals, 843 assists, 1,331 points, a plus 179, 3,357 shots. The first pick overall in the 2005 draft from the fine town of Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia.
Sounds pretty good.
And Brian Burke finally has him as a player on his team.
Yeah.
How many penalty minutes?
He has 701 penalty minutes.
That's that's a lot. That's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, I did not expect that number.
Yeah.
Because he has 2 or 3 fights under his belt too.
Yeah.
At least 3, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last fight. It was before 2015. I don't think he's fought after 2015.
Well, especially since he just come off of wrist surgery.
He came off wrist surgery. He came off of COVID. He's playing his 10th game of the year tonight against Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's okay, I guess.
Yeah, is he the greatest player of this generation? Something we will debate later on. That's what we call a tease. I'm a professional, man. And we say hello to Devin. Hello. And did you see how I transitioned? Another professional broadcasting moment.
It's amazing. And I apologize if you hear a bit of ruckus. Carl has, we have a box of ornaments, a bunch of balls, and he's actually just jumped in and started playing with them. So I apologize for that. I'm doing well. It's been a bit of a sprint for me for the past, I don't want to say 3 to 4 months here, or weeks. I'm running on fumes, but I'm doing well. I'm happy to be on. Great.
Your friend Tyler's here. Tyler is on location. Tyler
yes.
is the hometown hockey of the Hockey Podcast.
Yes, I have the hotel room set tonight. I'm in Smithers for work purposes this week. So nice to join you guys from here. Nice to see Devin again. And please, Dev, enlighten us quickly on what you have behind you there, because...
Yes, you should.
As much as I don't care for those teams, those are some pretty spectacular looking uniforms, let's say.
So behind me, normally you would see some hangers with 2 jerseys, a Flames and a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. But my fiance, Kaylin, decided to surprise me and buy wood jerseys. And so I was at the Christmas market for the past this past weekend, and they had a little booth there, and they are phenomenal. So definitely check them out. Wood jerseys. Give them a Google search. We'll be collaborating with them soon enough, I'm sure. They're absolutely spectacular. So if you haven't seen them before, they're definitely something to check out online, and definitely worth every single penny, because they are phenomenal, especially with those logos in front of them.
Yes. Speaking of collaboration, hello, Sean.
Oh, hello, Kevin. That's right. We've got we're gonna talk about our collaboration. We've got our partnership with the Pig and Duke. Go to the Pig and Duke on 12th. Go to the Pig and Duke on 4th, and join the Pig and Puck Club. and get a chance to go to a hockey game with Well, us, Devin, Chris, and I are going to go to the Calgary Flames versus Vancouver Canucks game late in the season. I've already forgotten the date. I'm horrible at doing ad reads. But go join the Pig and Puck Club at the Pig and Duke, and then you can also retweet any of our podcast episodes, any of our pod clips, any of our game recaps to get a chance to enter the contest as well. So yeah, let's get more the merrier, because you definitely want to come and join Devin, Chris, and I for a couple beers before the game. Watch Devin implode while watching the game, and then we'll go back to the.
How good are the Canucks right now? How much is shit fucking storm
that's
would
right
that be?
now. Wait till later when they turn it up and ruin their.
But
draft
that's why you're going to implode, because the Canucks are actually going to win that game.
Because Benny's going to trade for Evander Kane.
No, it's because they always do this at the end when they're out of it. Then they actually start playing loose and then ruin that draft lottery percentage. I can't believe that Sean might even probably have brought the simulator out already, but that's where we're going to be at that stage of the season. So yeah, I think you'd have to expect a Canucks win at that stage.
Don't you think, Chris? Devin's going to implode when the Canucks beat the Flames late in the season when we go to the game with the Pig and Duke.
Well, naturally, because they'll have all the pressure on them, and we'll be playing meaningless hockey, which means we'll get the win.
and just to let you know, the date is April 23rd. It's a Saturday, so we can get fucked up.
Oh, geez, it's a Saturday? Oh, boy. And Chris, I have a question, though. Will that stash still be on your face on April 23rd?
Funny enough, Hannah actually gave it her stamp of approval and wants me to keep it.
No.
Yes!
No.
She loves those rides that you're giving her.
Well,
Oh my gosh!
you gotta keep working at it, because that thing is freaking brutal right now.
Oh, it's amazing.
Hey,
I love it.
Yes, I realize it's a work in progress, but it's all I can do, man. This is how much my body grows facial hair. I can't help it.
Chris,
But by April 23rd, it could be majestic.
It should be okay by April 23rd. I think.
I have a request. Next time that we're on our weekly podcast, so next Monday, I want to see you have it with Just for Men. Just for Men Black, to see how much more glorious it can be.
Oh no!
I mean, we're a month in.
No, don't zoom in.
Oh my God.
I'm not sure how much better it's going to get, boys.
Hey Tyler, how's the ditches in Smithers? Because we're already in
We
there.
are so far into the
in a
ditch.
ditch right now.
Wow.
Wow. Well,
You're welcome.
Hold on. So you're telling me that your wife loves the Alex Burrows look of facial hair?
Well, the funny thing is, she's always hated this combo. So apparently, all three together works, but 2 out of 3 doesn't.
But that's what you normally sport. So how the hell are you married to her?
I know, right? She married
I
these
think
two.
she's tricking you into on that show is what I think it's a trap.
Amazing.
Just wait. She'll ask for him to get rid of the other 2, and it'll just be the stash.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for that.
You guys would love even more, right?
I want more.
Yeah.
I think we have to actually literally hear from Hannah on this. This is like I think we need some fact checking on this very,
I mean, if you really want to, I could call her in, but I think we're trying to get out of the ditch here and not dig deeper into it.
Yes. Thank you.
Man.
I do have a shovel though.
Yeah, we're going to need one. Well, let me try. Just so you know, as we are recording, as we are speaking, the Canadiens and the Canucks are just wrapping up their game. The Canucks are still up 2-1. The Flames and Penguins are in action in the first intermission and scoreless. So we'll touch on those games as we go through this. And on Wednesday, an actual legitimate professional is going to join our program, and maybe he will help. No, we're going to be more in the ditch. Let's just be honest.
I'm already here though. So.
Yeah, well, Graham Moseman.
Yeah, there's no chances with this show.
Oilers YYC, Graham Moseman, instructor of Sean, will be joining us to chat Oilers. I'm looking forward to ribbing him about the amount of penalties called on Connor McDavid. What else? I'm going to be ribbing him the whole time. Anyway,
Graham's the man. It'd be great to have him back on.
Yes. Also, just a reminder, we do our daily news pack every day. And one story I just finished recording when I saw this, I just wanted to touch on this very quickly. Jake Debrusk has asked for a trade out of Boston. He has 3 goals this year, 3 assists for 6 points. He had 14 points last year in 41 games. He's going to remain with the team. This sounds similar to what happened with Sam Bennett last season in Calgary. He's going to play with the team until they find a suitable replace for him. I don't foresee this. I don't think that this is going to be something that's going to be resolved very quickly. I just looking at the Bruins right now, not entirely convinced that we'll see them in the playoff race and that Eastern Conference. So I could see probably that being a trade deadline deal for the Boston Bruins, unless someone sees something different.
I'm trying to pull up their
11
their cap space, because you could do Jake DeBrusk for Evander Kane.
Oh, Jesus. Listen,
can you imagine Evander and Brad Marchand in the same dressing room? Never mind on the same sheet of ice. Ugh.
And Charlie McAvoy, he's an underrated pest as well. But it really doesn't surprise me, honestly. He's been on the trading block and in trade rumors for the past 2 to 3 years. So the fact that he is kind of him and his agent have put the pedal to the floor it makes a lot of sense to me. And it just putting more pressure on the GM in Boston. I can't think of his name right now, but Donald Sweeney. Yep. Get your shit together and fucking trade him for. I mean, the longer this goes on, the less of value that he does have, because he came out hot as a rookie and has been on a slow decline ever since.
And since we're on the topic of Evander Kane, I just want to quickly touch on something. Please, for the love of God, Jim Benning, I know you've been on a let's bring back the hometown boys streak. Do not sign or trade for Evander. Please.
Chris, that's under the assumption that Jim Benning has any say in what can and can't be done with this with this team at this point.
I was more so referencing what Elliot Friedman, I believe, referred to as a tombstone deal.
Well, Kev, I mean, if we're going in the wrong direction here, let me know. But can we just start with Kane? I mean,
let's start there. I wanted to start with Montreal, but let's go there. It was on Canucks Twitter. There were reports that the Canucks are exploring options with Canes, but the Canes camp is exploring options with teams, and they have called Vancouver. But I'm assuming that they've called every other team, and I'm not going to read too much into that. I would think, to me, if anyone is going to touch him, I would think that that's another trade deadline deal. I think you want to see how he does in the Barracuda first. Where is he at? And you might want to bring him in for a cup run. And I just I can't see, even if Benning had the permission at this point, the logic of bringing Evander Kane in, but maybe I'm missing something.
The only logic would be that Evander would really want to be in Vancouver because it's where he's from. But my view on this is I think he's kind of done in the NHL. He cleared waivers. Who's going to want to give up something for a guy that's such a risk with all the different off-ice issues that are surrounding him right now? Maybe down the road, but it's hard to see in the short term him finding another place in the NHL from my perspective.
It would have to be like a pure rental with salary retained to make that work.
So, Chris, you brought up something very noteworthy within salary retention. It sounds like Ron Wilson. Yeah.
All the best to him, by the way, as he's taken a temporary leave of absence for illness.
Right. Yes, absolutely. He has said, or I've heard through the grapevine, that he is looking to cut the salary in half. I believe Evander Kane's salary is $7 million per year, so it would be 3.5, and 3.5 retained by the San Jose Sharks. So having a 30-goal scorer retained at that price point, okay, how good is your room? And how are you able to subsidize the massive ego and personality that Evander Kane brings, with also bringing that he does have that skill that you do want in the playoffs. So I wouldn't be surprised if it takes that long to get to a trade. But hey, listen, if somebody's in the mix, and I mean, we raised our eyebrows with Tony DeAngelo going to Carolina. With all his controversy, I wouldn't be surprised if another team takes a risk on somebody like an Evander Kane, just for the talent that he does bring on ice. And maybe he does have a change of heart, and maybe he's trying to change his ways. But overall, I do think that he does have a future within the NHL. I don't know how long-term it is, but definitely within this year, I wouldn't be surprised if San Jose does find a trade partner, especially at that cap hit.
Yeah. The only reason why I even brought this up in the first place was just because his agent tweeted out that he was in contact with Vancouver. And speaking of Vancouver, somehow we just eked out a win against the Habs, 2-1.
Yeah, the bleeding has slowed for a bit.
The way I look at it is, you're going to have a very strong room to bring him in. It's going to have San Jose is going to have to eat a bunch of salary to make it work. And Kane's going to have to be just a bit player. Deb, you called him a 30-goal scorer. That's a bit rich for him. He's done it once. He's a 20-goal scorer, but he's got the speed and the physicality to add to it on the ice. If you can get him to buy in, and like, he'd be a good ad. But the locker room issues are a very big issue. Dan Milstein is his new agent. I'm sure he's called 29 other teams to try and figure out, because I don't think maybe even called 31 other teams, but pretty sure Buffalo and Winnipeg just hung up the phone when they realized what the phone call was about. So it's just one of those. I agree with you, Dev. I think he does have he's gonna land somewhere, but it's gonna have to be a very, very strong locker room to be able to let him be who he could be on the ice.
There's two. It's been twice he's scored 30. Just FYI.
Yeah, I mean, 26. 20 in 2020, 22 in 2021. Probably pace-wise, you could argue in those full seasons, probably more in the 30 range. Would I settle the compromise at a 25 to 30 goal scorer and say probably somewhere in there? Two places I could see. One, we talked about Tony DeAngelo. In Carolina, that if they are in the reclamation projects, that could be one place. The other one here, I'll throw another one out there. This organization is willing to throw anything at the wall to see if they'll stick, and they have no loyalty to anybody. Ask Marc-Andre Fleury. I could see the Vegas Golden Knights getting in on Evander Kane. Pete DeBoer is his former coach. They got to the Stanley Cup final with him. That if there's one team I could see getting involved, I could see the Golden Knights getting involved.
Where's that cap space coming from?
Where did the cap space come from, Jack Eichel?
Cap, that's the whole point. Is that they still have to make moves to move out cap to get Eichel back into the lineup if he plays in the regular season.
I think that's, for me, what I'm seeing the Golden Knights doing is they're going to be a major player at the trade deadline. I'm going to be bold here. I think that I can see them being one of the busier trade people at the trade deadline, and I think they're going to make they're going to try to make a couple of other major moves.
I agree with that. I mean, Vegas has always been very aggressive in making moves, and they certainly would view their window as being open right now. I just want to expand quickly on a point I made earlier about whether Kane has a future in the NHL anymore. I mean, some of the other guys that have run into some off-ice problems, that's more recent. I mean, with Evander Kane, doesn't it feel like it's been years of issues with him that have been popping up here and there and everywhere? I mean, going back to him and Dustin Byfuglien with the Jets, I mean, that seems like I brought it up here. That was how many years ago? I was like 6 years ago.
Yeah. He was in he was in Winnipeg at the time, yeah.
Yeah, and then some, and then some more serious allegations more recently with involving, possibly betting on games. Apparently, he was cleared in that one, and then some issues domestically, and then even going back to the last lockout there, where he had the stacks of cash there, using them as a phone and stuff. I think if you just start adding all of that up, it's going to make teams reluctant.
I agree with you, but I just there's.
Vegas is a team I could see that maybe isn't that reluctant.
Yeah, I don't think Vegas cares. Like, I don't think Vegas is not, doesn't strike me as this socially conscious team that wants to have good people in their roster. They want to win a cup.
Yeah, they do, but I don't think they're probably not quite as concerned about sort of the optics with the fan base as maybe other teams are. Yeah.
But for me, it comes down to how do you make it work? Because they're already right up against the cap, and they're going to have to make moves to dress a healthy line for what they have now. So it's
and if you're one of the guys in that room there, and you see people being shipped out to bring him in because of the cap situation, to Sean's point, is that going to go over well?
And they're already bridging on. Edging into that in those waters right now with how they've handled Marc-Andre Fleury, how they handled Ryan Reeves, and all that. Throw that in there. That is a rivalry that has been a big part of the Vegas right now has been the Sharks. Are you really willing to bring in a big part of that? And the fact, even though Reeves isn't there, I'm sorry, I don't see it. There's too many obstacles in the way. I agree with you, Kev, in terms of, and Tyler, in that I see Vegas being a busy team, mostly because they actually have to find a way to dress a healthy lineup. But to bring in a question mark in Evander Kane would be absolutely ridiculous, and I don't think Kelly McCrimmon would do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if he doesn't go to a place like Vegas, I mean, where does he end up?
Well, I think if there's going to be one team that is blatantly out there to make waves, it is Vegas. And Riley Smith, he has 1 year left at $5 million. Marchessault has 2 years after this year at $5 million. You have Max Pacioretty 1 year at $7 million. And realistically, you got to think that Jack Eichel will be a part of this playoff run eventually. William Karlsson as well. Both of them are on LTIR. I feel like if there's going to be, we didn't think that not Pacioretty, but Pietrangelo was going to be a part of the Vegas Golden Knights, and they made it work. If there's going to be one team that will surprise us, but not surprise us at the same time, in my mind, it will be Vegas. But I want to also say that if there's going to be a team that might surprise us in the East there, don't blink an eye about the Florida Panthers. I feel like they're very much on the precipice within that as well. And who knows exactly where, once again, the GM is eluding me, but that might be a team along with the New York Rangers. Talk about teams that are kind of teetering on, okay, are you contenders? Are you a playoff team? And those ones are, in my mind, the ones that stick out.
And just to bridge this to where we go with our next topic, I think there are in the U.S. where hockey isn't as big as, and I mean, this has been sort of a media conversation a little bit that I don't really want to get into this too much tonight, but the whole conversation around, the media markets in Canada and the U.S., it is very different. And, to Devin's point about Florida, and even Vegas, Evander Kane's past won't matter there. Like nobody's going to Like Twitter will outrage over it because that's what Twitter does. But the fan base in Florida and the fan base in Vegas, I don't think will really care. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but that's sort of
the
how
casinos in Vegas may care because they'll have he'll have more. He'll be right there.
Yeah.
But I have a hypothetical though. Let's say
I get before you go, Chris.
Yep,
I get the thought about like Vegas swinging for the fences, but Kelly McCrimmon is not a guy who's going to disrupt the locker room more than he already has. They are going to swing for the fences, but are you really willing to bring in? It's one thing to swing for the fences and bring in a number one center in Jack Eichel that they've been desperately missing. It's another thing to bring in a someone who has been thrown out of basically 2 locker rooms, now almost 3, and you're gonna have to trade away someone in this on this roster to do so. That would break the freaking locker room, and I don't think that Kelly McCrimmon would do that. He's too smart of a hockey man to do that.
To bridge, wait. Maybe Chris will. I'll let Chris throw in his caveat, but I do have a response to that.
That's fair. I'm curious in what Devin's take on this would be, because like let's say Calgary comes back down to earth a little bit, and they're kind of potentially hunting at the playoff at the trade deadline.
No,
physical, gritty, power forward.
No.
Is it remotely possible that they bring in a Sutter type player in a vendor?
No.
Kev, I believe that was towards me, but I'll you know what?
As far as Kevin, I just want to clarify.
I could see the thought process there. You'd have to have a very sound room within that, and I don't know exactly if that would be the right move for the Calgary Flames and the right player to help that room out. So I'm going to say no on that front. But to kind of bridge it towards what Kevin and Sean were talking about, I just want to say that we didn't think that Vegas was in on Mark Stone. We didn't think that Vegas was in on Pietrangelo. And lo and behold, they made it work along with Jack Eichel. So, I don't know if we can really say exactly 100% for sure whether or not that Kelly McCrimmon is going to just sit back and do nothing about this. They are bleeding for a cup right now. They are in the prime, and anything that they can do, they will do it to make sure that they can try. They can do that. And whether or not that breaks the locker room, you're talking about breaking the locker room. You traded away Marc-Andre Fleury, the face of the franchise ever since existence, for the Vegas Golden Knights. And for what? Was it a 3rd round pick?
Yeah, that's one that I mean, we could. That's a tangent, but I don't. Yeah, I think that's a wrong move on their part myself.
Well, it's one thing to go after big name players who are high character players. It's another thing to go after a player who is proven to not be that.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at. Opposite of a
we only say this because we're trying to think which of the other 31 teams would take this guy on, and we've already crossed off a bunch on the list there. And if it's not Vegas or a Florida or even Vancouver because of the hometown connection, where would he be going?
Yeah. Well, if it's going to be a trade deadline, it's got to be a contender. It has to be. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that we're like, if Vegas has been the biggest wild card out of all of them.
To bridge this, though, to Montreal and to Vancouver a little bit, and you talked about, Sean, I agree with you about Kelly McCrimmon. Kelly McCrimmon is a smart enough general manager to not make stupid moves, but what the fascinating question I have in Vegas is, and we'll switch this to Montreal, is the ownership situation in Vegas. We talk about rumors of meddling. I'm not convinced that this owner in Vegas is a hands-off kind of owner that says, hey, hunky-dory, do what you want, Kelly McCrimmon, because we just saw like trading a Fleury and a Ryan Reeves, and it's just that's the fascination that's there. I don't live in Vegas. We'll have to get someone on a full invite for someone in the Vegas podcast community. Come on this show, tell us about the atmosphere in Vegas. But there may be a middling owner going on over there and some things we are not aware of in that market. So
I could see Foley being an Aquilini type meddler.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah. All right.
One more thing on Vegas is that they don't have the depth. That's one thing that they really have. Like realistically, in their middle to bottom six, they don't have much. So they're swinging for the fences. And if the rumors are true that San Jose would eat half of that salary, so it'd be $3.5 million. Hey, swing for the fences. Go for it.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced right now. I'm not convinced Vegas is a playoff team. I'll just go on record as saying that I'm not entirely convinced that they're there yet. I don't see them. If I was to bet, I wouldn't bet that they're going to be a top 3 team in the Pacific. I think they're going to have to get in a wild card, and I think that's going to be fascinating. I think Dylan Johnson will be happy with my comment there. Anyway, can we move to Montreal?
Yeah.
Like, not literally all move to Montreal, but
that wouldn't be that bad a thing, would it?
Oh no, the food there is phenomenal.
Yeah, give me all the smoked meat.
Yeah.
I'll be there in December. I'm very excited for it.
Wow. Yes.
Right on.
Well, what happened in Montreal was what was expected to happen in Vancouver. Mark Bergevin, Trevor Timmins, and Paul Wilson have been fired, and Jeff Gordon is taking over as president of hockey operations. Jeff Molson said today that they are looking for a bilingual general manager, which means I am disqualified immediately because I don't speak French. If there is any rumors of me being the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, I'm just going to kibosh that. I'm kidding. But
scratch that bet off.
Yeah. I guess maybe let's start with your reaction to what happened here. Maybe we'll start with Tyler.
I'm a little surprised it's this quick. But then again, I think everybody's a little surprised it's gone this poorly for Montreal. And I mean, is it the fault of the general manager that Carey Price is away? Is it the fault of the general manager that Shea Weber can't play? He's injured. I don't know. On the flip side of that, though, there seemed to be enough sort of rumblings that Mark Bergevin wasn't interested in doing the job for much longer. So if that's the case and you're not making any progress here in the standings, maybe it's time to pull the trigger now. Probably the most impressive part of it is that the owner actually talks to the media in Montreal, gets in front of the cameras. It's nice once in a while. Shouldn't be too often. Don't want that. You don't want like the Ottawa situation where you're seeing Eugene Melnyk more often than you should. But
but does he live tweet games?
Swift and decisive from Jeff Molson. The whole, requirement or part of the criteria that the general managers, they put it in their release, be able to speak to their fans in both English and French. I mean, I don't agree with that, but I don't live in Quebec. I don't get the culture. I'm not part of the fan base, so I don't want to say that they're wrong, but you're limiting the pool of candidates in theory. So I'm not sure that's the right move, but we've seen in the past in Montreal when you try to put a general manager or coach in there that's not able to speak French, the French media there just won't let that go. So I guess it kind of has to be that way.
Tyler, we're Canucks fans. We know what it's like when the GM can't communicate properly, right?
Well, and that's important. It is at some point important, right? Especially for the people that are forking out lots of money to go to games or for sponsorship purposes. So, like I say, I don't really agree with that myself, but that's the way they run things there in Montreal. Clearly, a change had to happen. Clearly, they weren't going to repeat the Cinderella run like they had last year. And Mark Bergevin's had quite a long run there to run the franchise. And overall, not horrible. Got him to the third round. Once got him to the final last year. Pretty reasonably exciting group of some young players coming up there, but they determined it was time for a change, and they're making that decision swiftly.
Bruins.
Yeah, if anything, I was just bummed that they sniped away Jeff Gordon away from the Canucks potentially picking him up, because he was probably my number one favorite as far as someone who I'd want to be our next GM.
I'm happy you brought that up, because if I brought that up, all hell would have broken loose.
No.
No,
we're the reasonable ones here on this show, Devin.
Well, I would say Chris. No, Kevin is the reasonable one. All the rest three of you are not reasonable whatsoever.
he was just shooting down Chris's ideas a few minutes ago.
But honestly, that's where if you're talking about a franchise that is going from riches to poor and just needs some sort of a shakeup. Very similar to the Vancouver Canucks. And, I feel like Vancouver kind of missed out not getting Jeff Gordon, and who knows if they had conversations or not. And if Jeff was like, no, sorry, I'm not going to Vancouver. I'd rather go to another team or whatever. But from the outside looking in, I feel like Vancouver did miss the mark on that. But as far as Bergevin goes, man, he's been there for 9-10 years, I believe. I feel like he was on the chopping block at least 2 to 3 times. So the fact that he's able to come out the way that he has, good on him. Am I surprised? Absolutely not. We were, like I said, I've been waiting for this for at least 2 to 3 years now. But I really, the fact that they won the play-in round against Pittsburgh in the bubble. It was able to. I mean, they beat my Maple Leafs last year as well, and I don't know exactly where things would be at if it went the other way. I would assume that Marc Bergevin would have been out in the summertime. Obviously, that those are all what ifs, but listen, Bergevin, he won't be jobless for long. He'll be snatched up by a team for hockey operations or a GM somewhere, and who knows? It might just be the Vancouver Canucks, because once again, I'm very surprised that they haven't made any changes within their upper brass and front office. I feel like the Vancouver Canucks really need to make a move on a new GM really soon. And like I said, who knows if that's Marc Bergevin or not, but it is what it is. I'm not surprised that Bergevin's gone.
I'm doubtful that the Canucks would bring in Bergevin, though, just because the rumor is that he felt very burnt out dealing with the Montreal fan base. And let's be honest, the Canucks are probably right behind Montreal as far as insane fan bases to deal with. Well, so I really don't see that happening.
It's definitely not going to be worse than Montreal.
Well,
the rumor I heard was LA.
All three of you are fucking crazy, and Kevin, you're kind of half crazy. So yeah, I understand.
There is a legitimate. I'll wait for Sean, but there's a legitimate argument that I would not touch Marc Bergevin. I have facts to back me up.
Chris is right. I think Bergevin is burnt out, and he needs time to decompress and learn from this experience. So this isn't and hit the gym.
Was he
work
fat?
On those guns?
No, he just doesn't have the guns anymore. He was ripped for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe the food in Montreal.
His general manager in the game.
His record, he was able to get the Habs to go deep in the playoffs twice, which if Kyle Dubas did that in Toronto, there'd be a statue outside of the arena. But the drafting record underneath Bergevin is not good enough. He's put them in a bit of a tough spot cap wise. And let's even just throw it back to the last draft. He greenlit the Logan Mailloux draft pick in the first round, and that was an absolute tire fire. I think I think he can learn from it. I think he has the ability to do that, but not this quickly off of this last job.
Yeah, and it's a fair point. I think from the Canucks perspective, he checks a lot of the boxes that a lot of us have been talking about, at least on this show, where we don't want to see somebody brought in that's in the position for the first time at the NHL level. And then not only is this an experienced NHL level general manager, but one that's done it in a tough Canadian media market. So, yeah, the timing may not be that good because he may not want to jump into another job right away here, but he does check off a lot of boxes.
I just look at okay, he got that team to the Stanley Cup final. Well, he didn't get that team to the Stanley Cup final. Carey Price got that team to the Stanley Cup final last year. Let's be honest about that. He's made some very questionable trades. I mean, the PK Subban for Shea Weber trade, although turned out well for Montreal, that was not received well at the time. You also traded your first round pick, 9th overall, Mikhail Sergachev for Jonathan Drouin. That I don't think that you can look at that as a win. I think you traded Max Domi for Josh Anderson, and you probably can argue that while that was a win, that is a cap handcuff for the Canadiens. And I think we've talked about this on this podcast. That contract for Tyler Toffoli isn't going to age well, even though it's 3 years. This reminder, he was part of that 2010 Chicago Blackhawk team that everyone has had their eye on and have some serious questions. And although he was not named, he was part of that organization. And in terms of the Canucks or anyone right now, I just think that is something to me. I mean, whoever you're bringing in, and we talked about this in our chat, is going to have a lot of flaws, and there's going to be some criticism for it, for sure. But that's not a criticism that I would think that would be I'm comfortable with from a Canucks perspective bringing into this organization. Especially with this media market right now, I think that it just doesn't land for me.
I'll add as well to this, Kevin, too, is like if another part to be uncomfortable about is that he'd be kind of probably a general manager to bring in for the short, like for with a short-term vision to try and get this thing steered in the right direction quickly, as opposed to a long-term view, which is probably more sadly painful as it is 8 years into the Jim Benning rebuild here. So if the Aquilinis were to favor that route and hire Marc Bergevin, I mean, maybe we should be nervous just in that regard. Never mind all the other stuff.
And just with the Vancouver fan base, I feel like it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you bring in an establishment guy that already has experience, he's going to come with certain things that taint his record, like that for Bergevin. But if you also bring in someone who hasn't been in that role before, like someone who is an assistant general manager, but not a general manager, then the fan base is going to be like, well, look what happened with Jim Benning. This isn't going to get us anywhere. So, yeah, I'm not sure if there's any winnable situation with bringing in someone for the Vancouver job, which is probably why this search is as difficult as it is.
Well, now the reason why
we are 11 days since Jim Benning did his press conference and did an interview on 650. And the reason I bring that up is when you listen to Mike Ford and his firm, they say it takes about 18 days to do a proper search for a sports executive. So, like, if they're so adamant on having a succession
at this point, have any effect on the timing?
The reason why I brought up Bergevin to Vancouver is because he isn't getting younger. Yes, he's had a very stressful job. If you look at his what he looked like before being a Montreal Canadian GM and after Montreal Canadian GM, he looks very aged. And good majority of GMs who have a long tenure within the NHL do look very aged as well. But at the same time, you don't want to stay out of the job too long. If there's a job knocking at the door and it's a good potential for longevity and you're going to make some money, you're going to fucking do it for sure. But I do have to agree with Kev or with Tyler saying that it'll be if Marc Bergevin will be a part of a organization, it will be a short-term fix for a team that might need a little tweaks here and there to make a push for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I think if he's brought in, it's not to do a drop the bomb on it, scorched earth rebuild. I think it would be a guy that's going to do what the Aquilinis want and do it in as short a timeline as possible. And that, that's a bigger discussion and one that we've had before. And it should also be noted, Bergevin has played for the Canucks before back in his playing days, so not totally unfamiliar with what that's like, even though that's a very long time ago. Obviously,
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
he did play
his career. So there's some reasons to think that that's a possibility for sure.
Well, and especially within the ownership and the way that I believe that the ownership is running things is that obviously they want to win now, and that's very, very public and very vocal within the Aquilinis. And listen, I've said from the beginning, and I will stick by it, that Jim Benning has been a puppet for the Aquilinis. And I know that there's some people who don't believe that, but I truly believe that that is totally the way. Too. And if you're going to have a yes man person, a person coming in, Marc Bergevin, just coming off of what he's been doing, well, why not Marc Bergevin for the Aquilinis?
And I said on Twitter in response to a question from Sean, what do you want to see in the next general manager? I mean, a guy that can manage upward. And I think that, if you look at Bergevin's time with Montreal, he's probably done a pretty good job of managing ownership there.
Well, it sounds to me, just the one thing I will say, just from hearing from Jeff Molson, there is some, to his credit, there seems to be some innovation coming out of there. And one of the things that he did say that he wished he did bring Bergevin some help early in his tenure. And I think one of the things that is being discussed is the idea, and even Friedman and Merrick talked about this on the 32 Thoughts podcast, is the idea of bringing in two people to run the job. It's tough right now for one person to do that job, whether it's, whether you think it's bilingual or not. And there may be at least what I think the good thing coming out of the Montreal part of this is there seems to be some innovation about how to actually do that general manager job in a way that can be not as taxing. What I'm concerned with Aquilini, and where I do see Devin's point, is I'm just concerned that they're trying to make a splash. And I don't think that the splash is the smart thing to do. I think the prudent thing to do is to get someone in with a solid long-term plan that can build this organization up to where it needs to be.
Yeah. If they were looking to make a splash, wouldn't they have made it already, though? Sorry, Tyler. Yeah. If they were looking to make a splash, wouldn't they've already done it with a Rutherford, with a Jeff Gorton, with someone like that? Or the fact that for me, and I understand where you're coming from, and until the actions actually back things up, there's no way there's no way to prove it. But the fact that that Mike Ford and his firm has been linked to the Canucks, to me, says that they're not actually looking for just a splash. Now I could be proven wrong here, and they could just ignore what Mike Ford provided, and his firm is the information they're providing them. But the fact that they're bringing him in, to me, sounds like they might be looking at changing how they're approaching things. And
I hope you're right, but history is not proven that to me. That's the problem.
Oh, and I get that. But in terms of the fact that they've brought in Mike Ford, gives me a little hope that they are looking at things, and because this is also the ownership group that brought in Mike Gillis, one of the most forward-thinking GMs that the franchise has ever had,
if not the league.
Yeah. So they've done that in the past, and for me, I just look at that and go, and I really hope I'm right on this, and I may be pie in the sky thinking here, but when you look, when that Mike Ford and his firm are linked to the Canucks in terms of their search for either a new coach and or a new GM, to me thinks that they're trying to find the best option, not just a option to make a splash.
Well, the other thing that I'm wondering too is, and we don't know this, but is it possible that Jeff Gordon turned down the Canucks? Is it possible that Jim Rutherford has turned down the Canucks? I mean, we don't know that. Well, I know that Brian Burke said that he did get an offer. He said this a while ago. Brian Burke said he got an offer from a Canadian team that he turned down. That could have been the Canucks. We don't know. He never said the team. But so that could be one of the other issues as well. There's one of the okay, I'm just going to say this. I may frustrate everyone here, but I'm going to say this. One of the frustrations right now that I'm having when talking about the Canucks is there's so much rumor, there's so much
hearsay
that it's really tough to get into anything actually factual, because it feels like I'm talking about the next Avengers movie. What's the plot line of the next? Who are they bringing in? What's the plot? How are they going to solve this problem? Like, that's what I'm feeling like. It's kind of a bit of a soap opera. And I just got to say it. It's very frustrating to me to talk about it like this, because I don't feel that this is what, I don't feel like this is what I think hockey should be about.
No, it really shouldn't be like this. But okay, the biggest thing that I go off of is what does history say? What is how the Aquilini's conducted their business within the time that they've owned the Vancouver Canucks, and so especially within the most recent 5 years, or Jim Benning, 8 years that Jim Benning has been a part of this organization. I just see the exact same things happening over and over and over again. So that's where my opinion comes from, is the history. I mean, logically, I agree with Sean. You got to listen to, if you're bringing in a firm to figure out exactly what's going on with your organization, you're putting your hands up in the air and you don't really know exactly what you're doing, and you're relying on an external company to help you with that. So I feel like the majority of the Canucks fans feel that same way. Okay, let's go with a practical approach, but the Aquilinis have not shown that practical approach to me. So that's where my opinion comes from.
I just want to ask a question for clarity, Devin. When you're saying over and over and over again, are you talking about basically trying to find a yes man? Because I would argue that both Burke / Nonis and Gillis were not yes men for the Aquilinis.
Well, that's a valid point. It's just they're looking for some sort of end game to what has happened within this organization. Right?
I would argue that they hunt for shortcuts for sure.
And that is the problem, is hunting for those shortcuts and making sure that you're appeasing the fans, and that you're making sure that you're giving hope to the fans and you're giving hope to the team. But realistically, if you look at the trajectory of the Vancouver Canucks, there should have been a longer look at a bigger quote unquote rebuild, and not gone in so hard on the third and fourth liners. Not gone so hard on Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who is past his prime, and it's not. And I'm not saying Oliver Ekman-Larsson isn't a good player.
Larson's better than you're saying.
Well, you're also missing the other point here too, is they've gone all in on this core, which is turning out to be not that good.
Ekman-Larsson is good, but not as good as his contract is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And so marrying yourself to that contract for the long term is not the right answer.
The one thing I will back Devin up on, though, too, with that trade is, wouldn't it be much better, at least with the Canucks, if you would have had one of those lottery picks that you could talk about? Like, if you could talk about a Matthew Coronado, a Dylan Guenther, a Cole Sillinger right now, wouldn't at least, okay, everything is sucking, but at least we have a prospect in the future.
Oh, they could have had Matthew Tkachuk. I'm sorry to bring that up, but they could have had Matthew Tkachuk.
The could have, would have, should have, and part of what makes me so frustrated with this conversation is that a lot of it is, as you said, Kevin, hearsay. A lot of it is speculation on what is actually happening. The fact that Jim Benning has had 8 years and has done basically fuck all with what he's had. He's had one playoff like run to the second round. Well, you won the play-in round, and then you beat St. Louis, and then you took Vegas to 7 games. It's not good enough. And that's flat out. I completely understand the frustration, but there's so much hearsay and so much fucking speculation and rumors and almost flat out like just people trying to find what's wrong, and it just becomes more and more. And I don't know what is correct, what is actual truth here, and how much meddling the Aquilinis have actually done is still up for debate for me. I think there's I still think that they are passionate owners of the team that want to see success and winning. Because that's fun, because they're Vancouverites and they grew up as Canucks fans, and B, because guess what, that makes them money.
Yeah.
But I still have not seen enough. I just don't know what is truth and what isn't, and that's exactly why I'm in total agreement with Kevin. And what frustrates me in having these conversations is because there's so much people talking in definitives about what has happened when we don't actually fucking know. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's so frustrating. Like there's and I could be and that's why I've sort of actually done something that I yell at people for doing, and sitting on the fence and not choosing a table here, because I just don't know. Because I don't know what is truth and what isn't, and what has been fabricated and what has been more just or has been spun by whoever wants to make a story.
Well, but what we do know, Sean, is that the general manager is still there after all these years. He was hired by the Aquilinis. After Trevor Linden left, and that was amicable, supposedly. After Trevor Linden left, the general manager now reports directly to ownership, and he's still there. So that's not speculation. That's we know that. So the only and given the win-loss record, the only conclusion we make is that the general manager is doing what ownership supports. Now, maybe they've changed in recent times now, because it's sure
every GM does what the ownership supports, though. If the GM doesn't do with that, they're fired. That's true in every organization. If you're not doing, if your owner is not supporting what you're doing, you're out.
Yeah.
But it's about the belief in the GM of making sure that, okay, I'm hiring this person, and how much leash am I, if I'm the owner, how much leash am I giving this GM because I trust them, or how much is it that they are willing to be a yes man towards exactly what I want out of the organization. And my biggest thing is that I've heard so many things that lead towards this, and it's outside of the Canucks media as well, right? So I understand being inside those closed walls of Sportsnet and whoever. I mean, like for instance, I got fucking Steve Simmons for the Toronto Maple Leafs talking shit. And I know not to believe him, because he's complete and utter bullshit. He's just looking for clickbait, right? And there's a lot of, and I'm not saying that there's only one person and one, I guess, author out there who is making up this stuff just to have clickbait. But realistically, like, everything is steering in that direction, and like, when there's smoke, there's fire. There has to be.
Oh, I'm not saying that they aren't meddling owners. I'm just saying I don't know if it's as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah, we can only really guess the extent.
And if you have the right, and if you have someone in who can make the better decisions, if the Aquilinis are saying, no, we want to make the playoffs, and you have a GM who can make the right decisions, not spend $3.5 million on a Jay Beagle, not sign Louis Eriksson to 6x6, and you make better moves, this isn't even a conversation. Mm-hmm. So, like, for me, it is a combination of everything, and this yelling and screaming about nothing's going to change until the Aquilinis are gone, I think is a bit rich. But and as I said,
sorry to interrupt you, Sean. Are you speaking at the people that are saying fire the owners, or like?
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
am.
any of us-
I'm
okay,
saying
none
I'm
of
saying
us are saying that.
No,
But,
it's
yeah.
what I'm seeing. It's the same thing. It's what I'm seeing just throughout the Canucks Twitter and Canucks social media and everything like that, and on radio and podcasts and you've got. I just look at it and I just like, what is the truth here, and how much is it Benning just making dumb decisions to, as opposed to the Aquilini saying, no, you have to sign Jay Beagle. You have to sign Antoine Roussel.
I got a few points I want to make, but I'll let the other guys in first.
I just want to say within that though, Sean, is like, okay, well, you saw that Jim Benning made those acquisitions and made those contracts with a Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, types of players, and they did nothing. There's good GMs that are out there available, and they stood by and did nothing. And
I'm not disagreeing with that. All I'm saying is that let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. Because I don't feel like I'm being heard here. Because all I'm saying is I understand where you're coming from. I completely agree to a certain point. But this idea that the Aquilinis are the worst owners in sports and they need to be fired and we need new owners, I don't think is true. And I said, no one on this podcast is saying that, but I just don't know, right? I don't know where the truth lies and on what and how far along the spectrum the meddling owners are.
I have a question.
That's what I'm saying.
I just want to respond to that before you have a question there, Kev. Just that everything, like I said, we feel this way for a reason, right? It's having having all these media outlets, the articles that we read to make us believe what we want to believe and what we think is true. And I'm like you said, Sean, none of us are saying fire the Aquilinis. It's just whether or not they. My question is like, okay, with the Aquilinis, Jim Benning, why has this gone so long? And why have they not had a conversation with themselves of saying, hey, Jim Benning, is he the best fit for us right now? That's where my question comes from.
I want to. Can I hold on to my question here because I'll get to that. But I'm going to make a response from Jeremiah here. Sports Veered. 8 years of Bergevin in Montreal. We forget that was 8 years. Yeah. Brad Treliving, as an example, has been, how long has he been GM in Calgary? It's 7 or 8.
Slightly longer.
7 or 8. It's around the same time.
GMs have typically a longer leash than coaches in this league. That's a fact. I mean, I think Travis Green is one of the longest tenured coaches in the league right now. Right? So that's to me, I think, that's one thing. It's just a part of their tradition of what hockey is. General managers, it takes time. It's very rare that a general manager gets, leaves after 4 years. It's usually a longer time. And we don't always see the impacts of what's happening right away. I mean, how long was Peter Shirelli in Edmonton?
5 years max.
Yeah. Right. Well,
way too long.
Right. I mean, but again, that's just general managers seem to have a longer leash to see their vision come true. But I want to ask this question, and maybe this Devin and maybe the Calgary folk can answer this for me, since they're there. When's the last time we've heard from anything from Flames ownership?
When King died, that's probably about it.
When is the last time we've seen a Flames owner go on a microphone?
It's been years. Murray Edwards, I cannot remember the last time that he spoke or had a quote within the media. And he's the majority owner within the Flames, and obviously you have a bunch of different shares within that, but he's the majority owner. And I can't say I remember the last time that he's spoken out. Maybe when the first bid was for the first arena bid for Calgary and the West End there. Maybe.
When's the last time?
But I feel like Ken King probably he definitely spearheaded that. So that's not true.
The last time we heard from Daryl Cates is when they hired Ken Holland, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. And that is the only time that I think I've heard Daryl Cates. I think I've heard one more time. We have rarely hear from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. We've talked about Ottawa with Eugene Melnick. He talks too much, clearly.
Fucking idiot.
Yeah, Mark Chipman's maybe once a year.
Mark Chipman was the only time I've heard Mark Chipman was the Kevin Cheveldayoff press conference. So to Sean's point on this, where I do agree with Sean is why do we need Aquilini to speak? Like what is
We don't.
Well, there's no president of hockey operations right now, so
I would say part of that is you had Brian Burke with Calgary for years, and he was a big and Treliving's is good on the mic. Ken Holland's good on the mic. Shirelli was decent on the mic. The major issue is that Jim Benning bumbles over his words and doesn't sound confident when he talks to the media. When they had Linden there, it was a little bit better, but it just
yeah, you know.
I just look at it and I thought it's the way I look at the Canucks situation here and compare it to the Habs situation. When was the last time we heard of Jeff Molson before today?
Before today, I can't recall.
He never spoke up on the Logan Mailloux. When the Logan Mailloux draft pick happened, he never spoke.
No.
He never did.
He could have spoke volumes by firing Marc Bergevin at that point, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't speak on the Mailloux thing because he'd be undermining his general manager and his
and for what it's worth, Friedman said that's when their relationship deteriorated significantly. Was that draft choice?
Yeah, reflected poorly on the organization. Of course, Molson's going to be feeling uncomfortable there.
And in terms of where things have been at with the Canucks, is that I think the Canucks were I think they were probably on the edge before the pandemic hit, and then they had the bubble success. So that granted Benning another year.
Yeah.
And then, but he still had that debacle of an offseason, which probably put him on edge. But then when they got, and again, these are all excuses, and I don't agree. I don't think that, looking back, I don't think they should have been used as excuses. I think they should have
almost
been
just put
earlier.
the graphic on. These are our theories. This is not inside information.
This is not me agreeing with the decisions that either. Yeah. But then you had they got hit. Vancouver got hit with the Canucks got hit with COVID, so that basically threw that season for out the window. And then they said, okay, one more chance. I think that's all it was, is they said one more chance. And Benning saw that, made the OEL and Garland trade. Don't forget that Connor Garland's part of that trade. Like you talk about you talk about how you gave up like a first round pick, and there's no guarantee that any of those players that were available are going to be players. No guarantee, that no matter how good they look right now. But Connor Garland looks like a player. OEL, he's overpaid, but he's a good defenseman. But for whatever reason, this season has fallen right the fuck apart. And Dev, you talked about previous actions and history. And in that history, the Aquilinis want a succession plan in place before they make the move. They've also and then in terms of the other thing is they have never fired a GM in the middle of a season, and I think that's going to change. But I think they do want to have a successor in place. When they got rid of Gillis, they had Linden as president of hockey ops ready to go. When they got rid of Burke, they had Nonis ready to go. When they got rid of Nonis, they had Gillis ready to go. So for me, that's why I get it. I think the move should have been made a long time ago. But when I look at this, and I'm trying to look at this rationally. I'm trying to look at this without the fan goggles on, and I'm trying to figure out what is actually happening here. And to
I
me,
think
it looks like
part-
they're trying to find a successor before they make the move, whether that's right or wrong.
We look at history. I think one of the things we've seen in the Canucks history with the Aquilini ownership is that they have been willing to change philosophies over the course of their ownership. I mean, Nonis missed the playoffs, gone right away. Mike Gillis, as the day after they were mathematically eliminated at the end of the 13-14 season, fired. That did coincide with the fire Gillis chance at Rogers Arena as well. And then but then everything changed. They bring in Trevor Linden. They have the president of hockey ops. They have then a general manager's hired. They bring in all these newbies. They're patient. They were pretty patient with Willie Desjardins. I mean, he lasted longer than a lot of the negative Nellies at 1040 at the time wanted. They've been patient with Travis Green and Jim Benning. And so now maybe they're looking at it and saying, well, instead of us just picking a guy and throwing him in there, let's bring in a recruiting firm and see what they come up with. So, if that's the case, I don't think that's a bad idea. It's something that's pretty common in the business world, to hire recruiting firms to help you find that right candidate for the job you want to fill, right? So what's just so odd about this is you've got these two guys that are dead man walking, and if Jim Benning had the authority to fire his coach, I think we can assume that would have happened by now.
Yeah, because right now it feels like they're just asking for the mercy kill.
Yeah.
Well, you have to think about that locker room and how that's really affected them. Look at the past few press conferences. Like, fuck, it doesn't matter whether or not, okay, yeah, we want to make sure that we have somebody, a successor in the wing ready to go. How bad is that locker room going to be? Okay, Quinn Hughes, you have your young guys. Yeah. Quinn Hughes, you have Elias Pettersson. You have Bo Horvat, a part of that as well. Like, fuck, yeah, I feel like Connor Garland is only 25. I feel like you're talk about a toxic atmosphere that you have within that. You need to be managing that as well. And that realistically, I'm sorry, it comes from the Aquilinis. It comes from the top down. The owners need to take ownership of what is happening within the organization. And that's where my biggest frustration is. Like,
it is for everybody. It is.
I'm exactly where you're at, Dev. I'm just trying to look at it rationally and trying to see what is coming, not just yelling and screaming into the void
tomorrow, right?
But it's either way, it's fucking too late. In my mind, it is way too fucking late. Just hold on. Just as long, like as far as an organization goes, it is way too late in this season, in this regime, in this time period of like fucking losing. Like, holy shit, you have Thatcher Demko, who is an amazing goddamn goaltender. You have Elias Pettersson, who is arguably was talked about being a top 10 center within this league, and you have an amazing young defenseman. And they're sitting in this fucking ruin of a locker room that is unacceptable in my mind. It doesn't matter what your succession plan is. Get rid of that bullshit. Get some sort of turn into a different road. Whether or not that you have a GM and you have a head coach vacancy. It doesn't matter. It's a change. Change is good, especially where they are right now. So in my mind, Aquilini's, it is bullshit the way that you've run this organization within the past year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. But right now, I really don't care whether or not you have an accession plan. Change is good because what you have right now is fucking a tire fire for everybody involved.
So what you're suggesting is more of a Blackhawks style how they are handling their situation right now. They fired their coach when they figured, okay, this is getting too bad. Obviously, they already are looking for a GM just because of their current situation, but they aren't rushing into that. So maybe that is something that the Canucks maybe should have considered as far as a style of how to handle this situation.
You have to manage your assets. Yes.
Devin, it sounds like the perspective of somebody that's in the dressing room. And it's a good perspective. I mean, it feels like the rudderless ship. The players are playing like it's rudderless. I don't think it's too late though. If you make a change here in the next couple of weeks, and it is a house cleaning, I think if you're Quinn Hughes or Elias Pettersson or Brock Besser or Bo Horvat or Connor Garland, go down the list. I think everybody's going to breathe a sigh of relief and feel like finally we're headed somewhere. And there is a chance there. But the new regime has to come in and really take an honest look and say, is this core overrated? I think if you're asking me today, the answer to that is yes, they are overrated. But who knows? A new group, a new philosophy, new coach comes in and changes things. Maybe they can turn it around. But it's going to happen now because, you can't just have these guys out there just going through the motions, feeling like the organization is directionless. And it's just very perplexing that it's been this long here with a coach and general manager that are clearly being there's an attempt to replace them, and the players are wondering what the hell are we doing here?
Point.
Well, sorry, Kev. One more thing. The long-term view. If I'm a player within the locker room, why the fuck would I stay with this organization?
Because a couple of them are under contract, and
realistically, after that contract is done, I like it, the way that the Aquilinis have done their business. Me personally, I would not want to be a part of this organization. As much as I love the city, as much as I love the fans, as much as I love the coach and GM, the way that they've done it for me would be way too much. And talk about Elias Pettersson being on a bridge deal here.
Why Besser in his final year?
Exactly. Yeah. Why would I stay? It's my point. And so, it's about managing assets within it. Right? It's about managing assets. Yeah. And so your assets are your young players, and you're not doing that properly in my mind.
You're right, but the right move, to bring in the right management team and the right coach coming out of this. The only question mark is Besser at this point. Petey's got 2 more years after that. If you can right this ship and within a year or so, that's all water under the bridge. So that this change is needed. We all agree that change is needed, and change is needed as soon as possible. But you have to make that right decision. The next hire has to be correct. And and I agree with you, Dev. I think despite the fact that the Aquilinis want a succession plan in place, I think they should just pull the plug and say, all right, Bradshaw, you're the head coach of this team. All right, Stan Smeel, you are the GM of this team until we find the true replacements.
Yeah, man, Mark Bergevin stirring the fucking pot within Vancouver Canuck podcasting, because holy shit, we just went on a massive tangent.
Well, the one thing
we haven't gone off the one topic here, but
yeah, I just the one thing I do think in future conversation, and I don't think that this has been talked about enough, and I do agree with Tyler. I think we need to have a serious conversation. The 2 questions at some point, I think we need to have a conversation when it comes to the Canucks. Who is the core, and is this core overrated? And the one thing I will say, as much as Benning and Green and Aquilini have been taking hits in this market, fair and rightly, I don't think the players have. And I think that there's been some legitimate question of exactly how good this core is. And I think that that's worthy of a future conversation.
So are you saying that the Canucks need an Eric Francis? And I can't believe I just fucking said that.
No. I don't think that it's not the Canucks need that.
Well, I was trying to make light of it, but yes, like the fact that the players need more blame is ultimately where I was trying to make a little bit of a joke.
It's so frustrating, and that's part of where I think a new regime would come in and help that. Right now, I think just the media and the fans are just so fed up with this current regime that nothing else matters. The whole thing is to get change and to find out whether or not this core is as good as we think it could be. Whether or not Petey is a true number 1 center in this league, whether or not, because I think that's the biggest question for me right now, and it sucks. He's fighting it, like and it sucks for him, and it sucks for the team. but you need to figure that out, because otherwise you have to figure a way to build the team to play to the strengths of the players like Elias Pettersson, like a Quinn Hughes, like a Bo Horvat or a Brock Besser. You need to find a way to do that, and right now they're not. So,
and that's where Daryl Sutter and Calgary, who, by the way, still leading Pittsburgh 1-0 for everyone is following there. Right, that's what Daryl Sutter did in Calgary. He basically didn't give a fuck about what was going on. He benched young players, and Flames fans were not happy about it. But he's gotten the team to play that way, the way that he's wanted them to play. And of course, we can argue if the Flames' success is sustainable or not. Who knows? But that's Daryl Sutter did it, and the Flames are better off for it because he had an honest. He didn't come in with any preconceived notice. He had an honest look at the core and the players that he had, and he made the changes that he felt necessary.
Well, we were bitching on this fucking podcast about Daryl Sutter and how he was constructing his preseason rosters, because he had the team that's on the ice right now pretty much, and then he had the AHL team as far as like ice time goes, and you had your rookies pretty much. And I remember being on here and bitching about, okay, well, what about our top prospects like Adam Brzezinski not playing within the AHL or the NHL group, quote unquote. But whatever he's doing right now is fucking working. And is it sustainable? I think it's sustainable to a certain extent, for sure. Are the Calgary Flames going to be a playoff team? As of right now, most likely, yes, they will be. Are they going to go through turmoil? Absolutely. And that's where I am going to be most critical of them, is watching them go through the struggles of the January, February, the long stretches of the NHL season where it really doesn't matter too much. And it's like, okay, well, we're loosey-goosey, or we don't really care too much, because it is that lull of the season. And then the playoff stretch is going to happen. And who knows exactly where the entire league is going to be at. But that's going to be my criticism. Okay, once this team falters, how are they going to respond?
And that's that's why I brought up my hypothetical earlier, but I'm not trying to retread on that. Let's move forward.
And to me, that's where this leadership group in Calgary needs to step up. And whether or not you don't have a captain that can say, look at the C on my chest, and this is I'm the leader of this group and follow me. They don't have that. They've got a bunch of A's. And whoever steps up and makes makes this team their team to follow along is going to be huge for the Flames come crunch time. See what I did there, Kev? See what I did there? That's called a transition.
That's professional. Well done. I was going to go a different route, but I'm going to put this comment up from Dylan. Yo, Sean, I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best music videos of all time.
Thank you for that, Dylan. We needed that.
Kanye?
Yeah.
See, I guess to transition to that here, in terms of, we had this debate about it, whether it's time for Matthew Tkachuk to get the C in Calgary. I'll start with just my opinion here on this first. I look at this team right now, and I don't think they need a C. I don't, at this point. I think it's developing organically. The team is having success at this point. They let this team ride with what's working. I don't think we need to see at this particular point in time. The likely future captain of this team at some point will be Matthew Tkachuk. I think we can all agree with that, but does it have to be this year? Does it have to be next year? I think they have time to make that decision. There is a leadership core in that room. I would include Chris Tanev in it. I would include Milan Lucic in that. I can't wait to bother Graham about Milan Lucic. Michael Backlund. Elias Lindholm, even Johnny Gaudreau is showing, there is Markstrom there is leaders in that room that I don't necessarily look at it that you need that C and you need to give the C to Matthew Tkachuk now. I think, to me, deciding on the contract of Matthew Tkachuk is more of a priority than putting a C on somebody.
Once that contract drops, that's when if they have a long-term contract with Matthew Tkachuk, that is when they will decide whether or not he will take the C or not. I do agree that they do have a leadership group within that room, and honestly, to Graham Mosman, it all starts with Milan Lucic. Vancouver talked about Chris Tanev being dad for the longest time within the locker room. And I've heard nothing but the exact same thing for Milan Lucic within this locker room of the Calgary Flames. He is a motivator. He got a goal tonight, as Jeremiah said earlier on within these comments. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Milan Lucic and what he brings to that locker room. And one person you didn't bring as well up there, Kevin, was Sean Monahan. I feel like he's a part of that leadership group as well, even though he is in the lower half of that lineup, the bottom six. And the fact that we haven't heard any bitching from him, we haven't heard any turmoil within the locker room because he hasn't had the ice time that he normally has within the top six. I feel like that speaks volumes. And once again, I feel like that does come from Milan Lucic of he's gone through that. He's been in the top six. He's been in the bottom six. He's been scratched. He's been through pretty much every aspect of being a part of a NHL roster. So the fact that he is quote unquote dad within the locker room really speaks volumes to this organization and to where they're at right now. And going back to Matthew Tkachuk, I feel like it'll be very similar to the Brady Tkachuk situation in Ottawa, is that once that contract is signed long-term, then potentially he will be a part of that conversation. And there's still certain things that I still want to see more consistency of, is the leadership role that he shows on the ice towards the refs and towards the opposition and his teammates. But overall, I still think that he has the makeup to be a captain within this league. And it could obviously definitely has a high percentage to be the Calgary Flames that will anoint him the captaincy.
I'm glad you made the point about the Ottawa comparison there, because conveniently it's his brother, and then had just renewed his contract and became the captain there. But we've seen all the Canadian teams here the last little while take a patient approach with replacing a captain when there's been a vacancy, and I think overall people seem to be happy with that, other than in Vancouver, where everybody's pointing fingers when things aren't going well. I guess with Matthew Tkachuk, just keep an eye on how he conducts himself in the media here going forward, because that's a huge part of the so-called audition. There is how you represent the team to the fans and in the media. And, if he is showing a more mature approach with that. So, if the Flames like what they're seeing there, that'll make their decision a lot easier, I think.
Well, that's a big thing. Go for it, Chris.
I was going to make a quick little joke, and then you can go on your point. But I was going to be like, aw, they have two dads. How forward-thinking of the Flames.
Yes.
When you're naming a captain, especially in a Canadian market, it has to be a long-term decision. It can't just be, we're naming this guy because he's a veteran and he'll be here for 1 or 2 seasons. If you're naming a captain, he's the face of the franchise. He has to be the face of the franchise for years to come. So if the plan is for Tkachuk to take it, then yes, you need to make sure that next contract is signed, sealed, and delivered, and it's a long-term contract. It's not and he's going to be a Flame for 4 or 5 years, if not longer. Then which is why until you know that, I think going with all A's is the right decision.
For a season, yeah, for sure. I think by the time they get into next season, they're going to want to have that decision made.
Because, like, for me, it makes the situation that makes the most sense is either he stays Calgary long term and becomes the captain, or the rumor of he wants to go back to St. Louis because of the family ties. Those are like the only two situations that play out in my mind. So they either are able to make that contract work and they give him the C, or he's gone to Missouri.
Well, there's also the possibility that he wants to go to Ottawa and play with his brother, who's going to be there for the next 8 years as well, right? So I see that as another possibility. But I could definitely, to contradict Tyler's point there, that they only want to do it for 1 year. I could see it potentially they go for another year, depending on how well this conversation goes within this next contract for Matthew Tkachuk, because he is an RFA and his starting point is $9 million just for even 1 year. For this next year after this season. So that this is a very critical off season for Brad Treliving and the Calgary Flames and how he conducts himself. But the one thing that we do know within Brad Treliving's tenure is that he does very well with his RFA signings, and I'm full confidence that he's able to come to a conclusion and a realization of where the organization is at, and B, managing his RFAs, which will be Matthew Tkachuk in this offseason.
And it's not only about the C, though. It is about the core, and it depends on who's back next year, right? And that's, I still think, is really important. I mean, Lucic, it's a question if he's coming back. Backlund, I think it's a legitimate question if he's coming back or not. Tanev, I think, is here, but it is a legitimate question. I mean, even Monahan, it's a question if he's back next year or not. So having that C in that leadership core, especially with a guy with new at the C position, I think is going. That's to me where it becomes a little bit more important. To give an example, and probably some people would laugh at me when I said that the C should have been on Connor McDavid. But what I think the bigger point here with Connor McDavid, and I think the criticism that came out of that Oilers dressing room in the offs or out of the Oilers, is they didn't have the leadership under McDavid. They needed a Darnell Nurse to step up a little bit more in a leadership role. They needed other players to step up in a leadership role. They bring in a guy like Derek Ryan to help out with that as well. I think he's a leader in a locker room. So that's the other part of that's really important with too. Mm-hmm. And, we had a conversation about second line centers last week. At some point, I'd like to talk about the role of the fourth liner, because I think some people have underestimated it.
Well, it's everything for a team that's really serious about pursuing a Stanley Cup. You need 4 lines you can roll.
Yeah.
Trevor Lewis.
It's easily overlooked in the midst of a regular season with everything that's going on and all the games you're playing and people in and out of the lineup and all that.
Or the ultimate fourth liner, Patty Maroon.
Well, you look at Tampa Bay in that fourth line. It's Patty Maroon, Corey Perry, Ross Colton.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, there's so many other things to get into, but we're approaching an hour and a half. So let's do the Crosby Ovechkin debate here. I want to get into that. The first star of the week was Alex Ovechkin. Sidney Crosby is making his first tour of Western Canada, and when was the last time he came out here? It's been a long time.
2018.
2018 probably is the most realistic.
Yeah.
Just going off of basic memory.
Yeah. There was a debate. There was something on Twitter that said that Scott Wheeler pointed out that you could make the argument that Ovechkin is closing in, that his argument was as Crosby. You can argue Crosby is the best player of this generation, but Ovechkin has closed the gap. And I thought some people thought that was ridiculous. And some people may still think that that's ridiculous, but I want to bring this up. Where are we in the Crosby Ovechkin debate?
I'm still taking Crosby, but Ovie has closed it up a bit.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well, because at some point when you want to make those definitive conclusions on a guy's career. The games played column and some of these all-time records that come into play start to really matter. And the fact that we're even having the discussion about Ovechkin possibly catching Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record is just unbelievable, right? So the gap's definitely closed. But when we measure a player's greatness, it is truly on Stanley Cups and gold medals at the Olympics. And, Crosby still has the edge there a little bit and probably will keep that edge when it's all said and done. But, yeah, definitely for me, the gap is closing. And I was going to say, Ovechkin's making his case for, the Hart Trophy discussion this year, I would say as well. He's right now second in points, only 3 behind Leon Draisaitl. And, he's still doing it and he's still showing that durability and doesn't seem to be slowing down. He's just unstoppable.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with the rest of the guys. I would have to say that Ovie is definitely impressing and is closing that gap. But I find it really hard to say that that Ovie is more of a complete player than Crosby is, because to me, Sidney, it has that complete game, whereas Ovie has always been more of just the pure goal scorer. And yes, he's very impressive in his ability to do that, and he's very dynamic in his ability to score. But as far as overall game and the overall legacy of who's number one, I feel like you have to have a more complete game, and that's where my vote still goes to Sid.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Chris. Also should be noted that Crosby's a center and Ovechkin's a winger, and center is a more challenging position to play.
Yeah, for once I gotta agree with Chris. The overall game does speak volumes. The fact that he does have multiple cups in comparison to Ovechkin speaks volumes as well. Gold medals, like Tyler was talking about, it's just everything that Sidney Crosby has brought to the game means more in my mind than Ovie searching for the goals title within the NHL. So I just feel like Ovie, it's a little too late. Yes, he's closing the gap, but Crosby, his tenure is just it speaks volumes over what Ovechkin has brought to the game, and that doesn't mean that Ovie obviously isn't a good player or arguably one of the best snipers within this game that within the NHL, within hockey history that we've ever seen. But Crosby in my mind is superior to Ovie.
I'm going to say something that I think some people are going to find ridiculous, but So
the day is ending in the Y.
Yeah. I think Alex Ovechkin is the second best winger to ever play this game. I think only Gordie Howe played the winging position better. I think I have Ovechkin and my top 10 of all time. I also have Crosby in my top 10 of all time, by the way. I do have Crosby ahead of Ovechkin. Yep. But I think it's a lot closer than people give it credit for. Yes, Ovechkin has 1357, and he's played a little bit longer than Crosby's 1351, so 1331 in terms of points. 508 power play goals. He's about to break the record for power play points, 508 power play goals. He's about to pass Dave Andreychuk. But the way that Ovechkin, and both Crosby has done it as well. Crosby, we've talked about how Crosby adjusted his game from the beginning, and you look back at how he dominated at 16. But the way Ovechkin has changed his game over the years, like from being a pure bruising goal scorer that, could one time from his office to adjusting how he's scored goals over the years, to even adapting and playing more of a 200-foot game. You just don't see what he's done from wingers. And I think I agree with you that Crosby is the better player, but I do feel like as much as we nominate and admire Ovechkin for his goal scoring prowess, I think his overall game we don't give him enough credit for, because that has been, and he's 36 years old, and rarely do we see an Ovechkin injury. I mean, that's been touching wood, but he has found a way to keep himself relevant and adapt to the game as the game wears on. And I just think that is such an underappreciated skill about Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, I think this is a discussion about when their careers are over, and you look at the full body of their careers and the impact they made on the game. It's a more interesting debate and a smaller gap today than it was, say, a couple years ago. But if if Washington can go on and win the Stanley Cup again this year, boy, we'd be having this discussion again.
I don't want to always be referencing 32 Thoughts and Friedman and Merrick, but at the same time, that's something that they also brought up on this last episode is the fact that he's totally changed up his game at age 36 and is having a heart level season while doing so. So that in itself deserves a huge amount of kudos and credit for the fact that he's able to adapt his game while being an old dog.
While being an old dog, though, at the same time, once again, it goes to tenure. So, yeah, we can have this conversation again, but I feel like we would all come with a very similar outlook and opinion overall of that Crosby is the superior player no matter what. But, hey, good on Ovie for being able to adjust to the changes in the game and his ability to score at the pace that he is scoring at, even at mid to late 30s.
All I have to say is that Kevin, that is ridiculous. You are slandering Calgary Flames legend Jaromir Jagr.
Jagr is third.
Yeah.
How I didn't slander him. I'm crediting Ovechkin, but I do have a question. What if Alex Ovechkin was from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, and Sidney Crosbykov was from Moscow, Russia?
Yeah, it's a valuable point, Kevin. Still, Sid has 3 Stanley Cups and 2 Olympic gold medals on his resume. And,
for sure.
So I think for now, at this point, it's pretty definitively when their careers are over, we're going to look back on it and say that Crosby had the bigger career and the greater impact on the sport. But if Ovechkin get a second Stanley Cup here or somewhere along the way, and Sid only finishes with 3, it becomes a more interesting discussion for sure. Because you'll start to look at some of those all-time records and the games played and the style of play that Ovechkin brought to the table. That it makes for a fun discussion for sure.
Also, part of this discussion is also Ovie's ability to stay healthy comparatively to Crosby. Yep. And you look at their stats and compare the points per game, goals per game. Goals per game isn't actually that much different, but the fact, considering how good of a goal scorer Ovechkin is, the difference between him and Crosby isn't actually that big. But Crosby's hasn't played, I think, almost 200 games less than Ovechkin.
Sorry,
he's got concussion era, right?
Yeah, and others, but and then he's got a better point per game rate than Ovechkin as well.
Well, and to Kevin's point, okay, so if Ovie's from Cole Harbour and Sydney's from Russia, how different are the games going to be? Because we know that they are high flying Russians over there. Wanting to, be a bit more, have the blinders on towards the offensive side of the game in comparison to a full 200-foot game or a 3 zone play, as Berkey wants to put it. It'd be very interesting to see, those type of players and those type of skill sets, how different they would be if they grew up in different atmospheres.
By the way, Jake Gensel tied the game in the third. It's going to overtime.
Yep.
Can I just say Jake Gensel is one of the most underrated players in this league?
For once, we're not saying Barkov, and I'm happy to hear that. For the love of God.
But are we saying that just because he plays with Sid a lot of the time, though, or good in his own right?
He's damn good in his own right. I mean, that was
100%.
his ninth of the year. Everybody talks about, Crosby and Malkin were out. Malkin's still out. Crosby's still out. Just this guy doesn't get the credit that he deserves. Do you know if he's from Omaha, Nebraska?
Mm-hmm. A lot of ice down there.
Yeah, that's wintry times in Omaha, Nebraska. He just scores. He plays 2 positions. He's versatile. One other thing I'd also think a future conversation, the Flames in the third period, this is not the first lead that they've blown. And this is the second straight lead. And I know it's a 1-goal lead, but they blew a 2-goal lead on Saturday. There's a little bit of a red light going on for me. I'm a little concerned about that with the Flames going forward.
Just to bring back Crosby for a half second, though, bring up Dylan's last comment, because I think that's actually quite relevant.
Oh, sorry. I'd argue the reverse could also... Oh,
there it is. Yeah. Well, it's not really adapting his game though. It's just overcoming an injury. Like, is Ovechkin is able to adapt on the fly to keep his spot in the league due to age, right? Like it's
not apples to apples, but it's still worthy of commendation.
Maybe I didn't explain what I was trying to say well, because that's actually part of what I was trying to say. Is that Crosby's done that while still playing a lot less games because of the injuries, and has had to overcome that. Yeah. It's kind of similar to you talk about where would Lemieux be sitting in a lot of these rankings if he hadn't had his issues. So many games because of that.
Mario was the most talented player to ever play this game. All due respect to Wayne Gretzky. He was the most talented player to lace up a pair of skates that I have ever seen.
Where would we be talking about Bobby Lohr in all of this if he didn't blow his knees out, or if he was playing in this?
Even Murray, if we're talking knees.
And if you're talking in this day and age, when that injury wouldn't have been career ending, I think that's part of it. And it's why that the Ovechkin Crosby discussion is so interesting, is there's so many layers, and I think most people are still going Crosby, but Ovechkin's making a case that you cannot ignore for them to be, as you said, Kev, very, very close.
Ovie is 6'3" and 220, 230. Crosby is 5'11" and probably 190. Realistically, we're talking about two separate players. The only reason why we're talking about them is because they are generational players and they came up at the exact same time.
And the other thing is we kept trying to recreate this with different players since then, and no one's even come close.
Well,
no one.
Taylor or Tyler, right?
Also, just going back to Sidney's stature, though, the fact that he's as dominant as he is and has as tree trunk of thighs as he does at that weight, that's impressive.
Take Sid low in the offensive zone, below the hash marks every fucking time. But if you're talking about a one-timer at the hash marks, Ovie all day.
Can't even see the puck when Ovie's shooting it from the 1T there.
By the way, what Dylan's comment was,
there's no competing.
What Dylan's comment was, for those that are listening, I'd argue the reverse could also be said, Sean. How impressive is that Crosby overcame his concussions? There was a period that people worried for his career.
And that's why I said I don't think maybe I didn't explain it properly, because that was I was arguing in favor of the fact that what Crosby has done in terms of playing a significantly less games and overcoming that and still being a better point per game player than Ovechkin is a part of why I would still pick Crosby.
So let's just sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's to Dylan's last comment. Where would Korea be sitting? I'd take Biz Nasty over Paul Korea any day of the fucking week, because listen, he's great in the room.
I will give a serious
including here.
I'll just give a serious, quick answer to that. Korea's fourth on my list of all time. Korea. If Korea was in a different era, he would have scored more. He would have potted a lot more points, for sure. And if he was healthy,
if he played in this era where they protect the players a lot more than they did back in the dead puck era, and didn't have to play against the Scott Stevens and Rob Blakes and the
And
Darian
vicious
Hatchers.
elbows.
Yeah,
It'd be a
hit from
completely
still gives
different.
me- Still shakes to the core just looking at that highlight sometimes.
It's
Yeah.
true. And
That's
talk
unbelievable.
about Theo Fleury as well. Any type of smaller player who actually made it back in the day.
Yeah.
Imagine them now.
Yeah.
True.
Cliffy Ronning.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Canucks connection for a small guy.
Flurry, you're, definitely. Yeah.
By my one final question before we close off, who's the center on a Crosby McDavid line?
Crosby, for sure.
Crosby. Yeah.
I mean, even on McDavid's own team, if they have him and Draisaitl out there together, it's usually Leon that's at least taking the face-offs anyways.
You want that speed coming down the wing. Holy fuck. And that we had this conversation about, okay, where does McDavid sit within the center ranks on the Canadian team? You put him fucking wing because you pass him that puck and he's gone.
Yeah. That's probably what they're going to do too.
If they go. If they
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's next week. I think we'll talk about that.
Fuck.
Yeah, because Ottawa, I think they still got 2 games to get rescheduled somewhere, and now the Islanders are missing
2
or 3.
Yeah.
Can we leave this on a goddamn happy note for the love of God, guys?
All right.
Well, I'm still pretty optimistic that they're going to go.
And hey, guys, Canucks won tonight.
Yeah. We're not having the tank talk right now. So yes, yes, they did.
Petey
They only
scored a
need like
vintage
another
Petey goal.
horrendously poor team, but a win is a win.
Let's put it this way. Petey scored a vintage Petey goal with it in terms of
Yes.
like going back to what we talked about in terms of one-timers. That was a vintage Petey one-timer. That was great.
As he's been compared to Wayne Gretzky with his one-timer. Do you remember that?
Oh, that wasn't what that was.
It was his slap shot, wasn't it? Not the one timer.
He had an old school clapper off the wing against Detroit, and people were like, oh, that
Because it was like a frame by frame comparison almost.
Yeah,
because it was
that's
like
all
in the same face
Okay.
of shot where they let the clapper go.
You're comparing to one of the greatest of all time. So I just thought it was funny.
On a happy note, here's a happy note. The Seattle Kraken have won 2 games in a row. They beat
That's
the
not
Buffalo.
happy.
I'm happy for them.
Divisional rival.
Boo
No.
the Kraken. Fuck the Kraken.
I'm trying to leave on a happy note.
Well, you're
Hey,
failing.
don't
at
talk about the Kraken.
Canucks won. Leave it there.
No matter what I say, I'm going to get defeated because my other comment is here is a happy note that we can leave on tonight. I just want to pull this up because I want to make sure I pronounce his name correctly because a 46-save shutout for Arizona Coyotes goaltender. Yes, I said the Arizona Coyotes goaltender. His last name is Vejmekla. His debut tonight, 46 saves, and the Arizona Coyotes beat the Winnipeg Jets 1-0. Former Canuck Antoine Roussel scored the only goal. Anyway, how do we follow everyone? From Louis Erickson. How do we follow everyone?
I am Bearded Connect 03. Please retweet our episodes on Twitter. Please retweet our game recaps, any of our pod clips to get an entry into the Pig and Puck Club contest. And the word of the week this week is going to be change, because that's what the Habs did, and that's what we want the Canucks to do. So the word of the week is change. DM that to us on Twitter at podcast_hockey to get 3 entries into the Pig and Puck contest, where you could have a chance to go to a hockey game, a Vancouver Canucks at Calgary Flames game on April 23rd, where you can see Devin implode when the Canucks beat the Flames, and you can see Chris and I have a great
Can you
time.
imagine watching the game with us?
Oh my God.
I've done it, folks. It's brutal. No, I'm just kidding.
So, as I said, please retweet any of our episodes, pod clips, or game recaps to get 1 entry into the Pig and Puck contest. Please DM us the word of the week, which is change, to get 3 entries into the Pig and Puck contest, and we will hopefully see you at the Pig and Duke before the game, and we will go to the game with you.
Right on. And you can follow me on Twitter at tnoble, TNOBLE.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
You can follow me at GordHow09 and check out these fucking beauties behind me here. Go Google wood jerseys and this amazing locally owned and operated company out of Calgary. They're making these beautiful jerseys out of wood. So check them out, and you can DM me at GordHow09, and I will not be upset. Okay, all right. The word of the week is Sean sucks.
That is 2 words. That is not allowed.
We're going to mock at least use proper grammar.
So we started in the ditch and we ended in another ditch. You can follow me, KVOLE, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Subscribe to wherever your audio is. Like our stuff, subscribe, share. Not only for the wins, but tell everyone that you like us. These jerseys are from Van City, by the way, so you can go there and buy jerseys there.
Anyway, Sports on Seymour.
Yeah, that's right. And Graham Mosman on Wednesday for Crosby v. McDavid. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.
Who cares about Graham Mosman?